Every time the fate of the A-10 is discussed, it becomes a battle of worldviews. On one side are the modernization advocates who speak in terms of budget, range, and speed. On the other are the frontline military who understand the importance of effective air support. It's funny that they're trying to justify the Warthog's write-off not even by its shortcomings, but by its outdated appearance. But pilots love this plane, and the infantry knows that there's no better friend than the A-10. So why does the aging attack aircraft evoke such a profound emotional response? And how did this noisy, ungainly crap become a symbol of efficiency, even in the midst of the stealth fighter era? In the late 1960s, the United States faced an urgent need for a specialized aircraft to support ground troops. By the time of the Vietnam War, the U.S. Air Force's only close air support aircraft was the propeller-driven Douglas A-1 Sky Raider of the 1940s. It was slow, vulnerable to ground fire, and had only modest armament. The result was an impressive loss of about 266 of these devices in combat over the Vietnamese jungle. September of 1966 saw the order from General John P. McConnell, Chief of Staff of the U.S. Air Force, to develop a specialized CAS, Close Air Support aircraft, under the new Attack Experimental AX program. And a year later, the request for information was distributed to 21 defense contractors. However, the final requirements were not formulated by U.S. Air Force representatives until the spring of 1970, when the service submitted a more detailed request for proposals, which emphasized a maximum speed of 460 miles per hour, a mission radius of 285 miles, an external load of up to 16,000 pounds, a takeoff distance of up to 4,000 feet, and a price per aircraft of no more than $1.4 million, or about $12 million today. The AX was the first U.S. Air Force aircraft designed exclusively for CAS, and the Warthog was also, not without reason, teased as the first aircraft designed around a gun. And there's some truth in this, because in parallel with the request for the development of the attack aircraft, the command issued a separate request for proposals regarding a rotary automatic 30mm AX cannon with a rate of fire of 4,000 rounds per minute and the highest possible muzzle velocity. After a lengthy selection process, Fairchild Republic was chosen to manufacture the aircraft, with General Electric responsible for the cannon. The entire concept of the A-10 revolved around one idea: close, continuous support of ground troops. It was supposed to hover over the battlefield, not fleeing after the first enemy salvo, but striking again and again. The designers of this attack aircraft did their homework at the highest level, simplifying the technical solutions to the utmost. The twin TF-34 GE100A turbofan engines, each producing 9,065 pound-feet of thrust, are mounted high on the fuselage, away from the ground and potential damage. This placement allows them to even operate while being serviced and rearmed on the ground, greatly reducing return to combat time, and their infrared signature is greatly reduced by the bypass ratio and the exhaust routing over the tailplanes. Additionally, engineers protected the engines from the rest of the airframe with firewalls and fire suppression equipment. The A-10's 4 fuel tanks were positioned closer to the center and separated from the fuselage so that enemy shells would have to penetrate the aircraft's skin before they could hit the outer skin of the fuel tanks. Moreover, damaged fuel lines are self-sealing. If the damage received by the aircraft exceeds these self-sealing capabilities, then the check valves will not allow fuel to enter the damaged tank. Most of the Warthog's fuel system components are located inside the fuel tanks, so component failure will not result in fuel loss, and the refueling system is designed to purge after use. Additional protection against debris and fuel leakage in the event of damage is provided by mesh polyurethane foam covering the inside and outside of the fuel tanks. But what if the enemy was able to destroy all 4 fuel tanks? Well, in that case, the A-10 and its 2 self-sealing sumps guarantee a fuel reserve of at least 230 miles, which, although it sounds crazy, has already been proven by A-10 pilots during combat sorties over the past almost 50 years. Although the plane got the nickname Warthog due to the external resemblance of its protruding fangs, the guns, and massive front landing gear with the snout of an African boar, in our opinion, the nickname Terminator would be much more appropriate for it. After all, this machine is practically indestructible. Firstly, it can easily survive direct hits from armor-piercing and high-explosive shells of 23mm caliber or lower. Secondly, the A-10 has dual redundancy of hydraulic flight systems and a mechanical system as a backup in case the hydraulics fail. Thirdly, the manual reverser mode allows the pilot to return to base even if his bird has lost one of the engines, half of the tail, the elevator, or half of the wing. Finally, the Warthog's cockpit and flight control systems are protected by 1,200 pounds of titanium aircraft armor, aka an armor bathtub consisting of 0.5 to 1.5-inch thick titanium plates that can withstand 23mm cannon fire and indirect 57mm shell fragmentation. The interior of this bathtub is covered with a multi-layer nylon spall shield, and the front windshield and canopy are resistant to small arms fire. What can we say if about 6% of the empty weight of the A-10 is the weight of the armor? To make it even more difficult for enemies to damage the aircraft, many A-10s have a fake canopy painted dark gray on the underside of the hull, just behind the gun. This not only completely confuses enemies about the aircraft's position, but also completely confuses them in which direction the Warthog is maneuvering. The A-10's greatest asset is its cannon, the GAU-8A Avenger, one of the most powerful aircraft cannons ever created. It's a hydraulic 7-barreled automatic Gatling gun that literally eats enemy armor for breakfast. The Avenger's rate of fire was originally an optional 2,100 rounds per minute on the low setting or 4,200 on the high setting. However, this eventually settled on the single value of 3,900 rounds per minute. At this rate, it took the A-10 about 18 seconds of continuous fire to empty its magazine, but in practice, the gun was still limited to 1 and 2 second bursts to avoid overheating and conserve ammunition. No, there are no technical limitations on the duration of continuous gunfire. The pilot can use up all the ammunition in one burst without damaging the GAU-8. However, this approach greatly reduces the service life of the barrel, and the gun itself will require additional checks. The innovation in the GAU-8A ammunition design was the use of aluminum alloy casings instead of traditional steel or brass, due to which the gun added 30% to the ammunition capacity for a given weight. In terms of size, the 30mm Avenger cartridges are comparable to a standard beer bottle, while the gun's own dimensions exceed a Volkswagen Beetle. It's worth remembering that in order to remove this weapon, the maintenance personnel are instructed to install a jack under the tail of the aircraft, otherwise it'll simply tip over since the cannon accounts for the lion's share of the Warthog's front weight. Was there a chance that this legend would go without updates? No, sir. In the late 1970s, the A-10s received a pave-penny laser receiver mounted on their pylons under the starboard side of the cockpit. This allowed them to reflect laser designators and engage opponents even more precisely. The 1980s saw the introduction of an inertial navigation system for the Warthog, and in the early 1990s, they received the Low Altitude Safety and Targeting Enhancement, LACED upgrade, which provided computerized weapons guidance equipment, an autopilot, and a terrain warning system, which is especially important for low-flying aircraft like the A-10. The late 90s and early 2000s were not a downtime for our hero today either. It received the Global Positioning System Navigation System and multifunctional displays, and the LACE system was upgraded with the Integrated Flight and Fire Control Computer, IFFCC. The Air Force also acknowledged that the Warthog's engines were starting to deteriorate and planned to replace them with new ones. However, such ambitions would have cost the service more than $2 billion in 2001, so the idea was shelved. Then came a tedious wing replacement process that continued into the 2010s as the Air Force calculated that they were at risk of running out of power by 2011. The new wings, installed under the Thick Skin Urgent Spares Kitting (TUSK) program, significantly increased the Warthog's readiness for new missions, further reduced maintenance costs, and breathed new life into the aging attack aircraft, keeping it relevant until at least 2035. And a little later in the winter of 2016, Boeing announced that the A-10 with the new wings will remain in service without problems until 2040. The upgrade of the A-10A to the A-10C was a huge leap for our hog. Between 2005 and 2011, the entire fleet of 356 A-10s and OA-10s received all-weather capability, an improved fire control system, electronic countermeasures, ECM, smart bomb guidance, a modern communication suite led by Link 16 and SATCOM, and an improved cockpit that includes 2 multifunction displays and a hands-on throttle and stick HOTUS configuration that allows placing buttons and switches on the throttle lever and flight control stick. The update, called Suite 10, included multiple target list improvements, allowing the pilot to engage multiple targets with 3 different types of weapons in a single pass. Furthermore, the aircraft received full integration of the AGR-20 Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System, APKWS laser guidance systems, which provides the ability to target at the maximum kinetic range of the rocket with aiming solutions designed within rocket tolerances. By the start of fiscal year 2024, the U.S. Air Force had 218 A-10s in service, 39 of which had flown to the boneyard in the same year. Unfortunately, military high command believes that these legendary attack aircraft have increasingly limited survivability, especially in any future high-level operations such as a conflict in the Pacific against China. However, this option on the part of Air Force representatives does not prevent Congress from actively preventing regular attempts to get rid of the Warthog fleet. Moreover, they're still carrying out combat missions. For example, Warthogs were among the aircraft sent to the Middle East in October 2024 amid fears of further escalation of the conflict between Israel and Iran, as well as other potential crises in the region. Since then, the veteran attack aircraft have been used extensively in recent weeks to strike across Syria amid renewed uncertainty in the country, following the overthrow of dictator Bashar al-Assad. Speculation then followed that the A-10s could migrate to foreign air forces, such as Jordan or Ukraine, after the U.S. Air Force finally retired the aircraft. But you know what? Warthog's not just a plane, it's a philosophy. An engineering solution that puts the fulfillment of tasks and the lives of infantry above any aesthetics. Power enclosed in a solid metal shell. A rare example when technology does not become obsolete because its value is not in the technology but in the idea. And as long as there's a need to support soldiers on the battlefield, you will not get rid of the A-10. It's a hero of the invisible front, who rarely appears on TV, does not shine in pompous air shows, but rather does what it knows it can do better than anyone else, and it does so properly, consistently, and with extreme effectiveness. Now it's your turn to tell us who might replace this legendary aircraft. Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell for more content like today's. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.